Davante Adams is available. Why this year might be the perfect year to use a first-round pick on a receiver. And Brandon McManus is back.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. You will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how, thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Davante Adams is out and ready to be scooped up. Though the reporting, and this has been the reporting for quite some time now, going back to the Super Bowl, that he would prefer to play on the West Coast. When it was reported by Ian Rappaport that he was going to be released or going to be traded, it was when he was going to be released. He reiterated, Rappaport did, that the pull of playing on the West Coast is real. And unfortunately for the Packers, and we talked about this, about why you would want to trade for him, is the 49ers could use a receiver. Now, we have reporting that Adam Schefter saying Brandon Ayuk, even after trading Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk potentially gettable in a trade. Interesting. The Chargers are a perfect Davante Adams team. Ladd McConkey had a terrific rookie season, but he is really more of a slot receiver. You get a boundary, ball-winning, do everything #1 receiver to go with Ladd McConkey. That is a terrific combination for the LA Chargers. And then the Rams, they're loaded for bear now. They're going to trade Cooper Kupp. You bring in Davante Adams. He can play in the slot, knows at least a variation of this offense, has played certainly with big arm quarterbacks. That is a perfect fit too. For all of those reasons, I advocated for the Packers to make a move, give up some draft capital to get Davante Adams. Now, what is interesting about this, though, is the Jets released him, which means he can be signed right away. No new league year, none of that. And will not count against the comp pick formula for the team that acquires him. So if the Packers were to sign him and then acquire, these other pieces, the Adams part does not count against them in their comp pick formula. So if Josh Myers gets signed to a big deal, a $10 million, the John Runyon Jr. deal, they could sign a corner that's offset. Well, the Adams money wouldn't count. It's free in the compensation part of this. You still got to pay it, of course. Now, what I said when we first heard that Davante Adams wanted to be on the West Coast was, I thought it was interesting. I still think it's interesting that the reporting of that came out simultaneous to the strongest push being made from the Packers organizationally, from the players in public, from Davante Adams himself going on K Adams, Davante Adams posting his green and yellow sneakers, the cryptic connections to the Packers saying he was open to a reunion. Then Tom Silverstein reported he was open to a reunion. And then we get he'd like to play on the West Coast. That felt coordinated to me. The fact that Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter had it within 24 hours of one another suggests to me that that was a coordinated attempt to create a little bit of leverage. And here is the question that I would like to ask Davante himself. What do you want your legacy to be? Do you want it to be that you were a mercenary at the end of your career, that you left Jordan Love to go play with Derek Carr, your former Fresno State teammate? That ends up in disaster. Now, you got your money. You got a time in Las Vegas. You got to be closer to your family. You expand your own beautiful family. And I totally understand the reasons for that. That goes terribly wrong for reasons completely out of your control, Davante Adams. Then you follow Aaron Rodgers to New York into a irredeemable situation, it turns out. You get a coach and a GM fired. That goes horribly wrong, again, for reasons outside of your control. What do you want your legacy to be? That you made this bad decision and then another bad decision, and then at the end of your career, you tried to right that wrong by going and playing in California with Justin Herbert, chasing a ring there? Or do you want it to be that you came back to where your career started? You right the wrong of misunderstanding or misevaluating Jordan Love and say, I'm going to finish what I started in Green Bay, the team that drafted me, that believed in me. I understand that the end was not what you wanted it to be, and that you didn't get the respect and the money that you, not even you felt you deserved, though you did feel that way, that you rightfully deserved. The Packers handled that situation poorly. And I hope, for Davante's sake, the Packers are willing to come to him and say, look, we screwed this up. We should have never let you leave. Let's compensate you. You should finish your career as a Packer. Let's go win a Super Bowl. Isn't that a better ending to your career than going to be a Charger, than going to be a Ram, especially than going to be a 49er? I mean, that's like, that is anathema to being a competitor. And I'm not saying Davante Adams is scared to compete. I'm saying that move is just kind of weak. It's just kind of weak. Wouldn't you rather come back to Green Bay, be the guy that lifts this team, and then you get the credit? This is not Aaron Rodgers. Because if you guys would have won in 2020, won in 2021, you know who would have got the credit? Aaron Rodgers. But if you come back to Green Bay and you can go win a Super Bowl, you will get the credit. You will be the guy that came back and finished what he started. The prodigal son returns. You will be a conquering hero in Green Bay, a folk hero for life in Green Bay. And there is not a better place to write your name in the history books than the most historic franchise in the National Football League. This is your opportunity to cement yourself as one of the all-time greats, one of the all-time Packers, to be sure, and to lead this young group into the next phase of development for this Packers team, to be the bridge to this next great Packers run. You can do that, Davante Adams. Other people may not believe you are still that quality of player. I do, because I'm old enough to remember what happened last year when you almost single-handedly beat the Baltimore Ravens, one of the best teams in the league. I know you can still impact games that way. Where do you want to do that? What do you want it to mean? It will not mean as much anywhere else as it will in Green Bay. It just won't. So what do you want your career to look like? How do you want it to end? The storybook ending is in Titletown. We'll be back on Locked On Packers. You've probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything you need to keep your pet healthy and happy. Whether you're shopping for foods, treats, or even pet healthcare, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products from your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food to treats to toys to beds and grooming. It's not just for dogs and cats. They've got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health with prescriptions, telehealth vet visits, and even in-person vet clinics rolling out nationwide. Auto ship, also a game changer. You can set up automatic deliveries for food, treats, or any essentials so you never run out, and you can easily cancel any time. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. Brian Gutekunst pointed out at the Combine that it's not a philosophy for the team to not pick first-round receivers. That it's not like they've never wanted to do it, and that there is some internal mandate, some part of the description of the Ron Wolf philosophy that says don't take receivers in the first round. This is a receiver class where I like a lot of the day two players. I think there are some dynamic options for the Packers in particular, because I think Green Bay could get away with just adding some speed, a Jalen Royals type receiver with Dontavian Wicks and Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed, while Christian Watson gets healthy, would have a meaningful improvement and impact on this Packers team. And potentially enough to get this offense, this playoff offense in particular, over the playoff hump. But I go back to 2020 when the Packers wanted to draft a receiver in the first round. Brian Gutekunst, look, over the years, and we didn't know it as well in 2020 as we do now, Brian Gutekunst is going to tell you what he wants to do. They don't always do it because they can't always do it. I think right now that's where we are with this DK Metcalf situation. I told you I thought that the Packers believed they could get a deal done should they choose to get one done. I think the momentum on that has slowed down significantly since that started, since those conversations started last week. That's just the reality of how these things ebb and flow. But so Brian Gutekunst said in 2020, in the run-up to the pre-draft and all that stuff, we feel like we want to add. And we like this class. He was explicit about it. And we found out after the fact, and there's some hints here, and I'd heard some things before the draft about some of the players that they liked. Justin Jefferson was one of those players. If they'd been able to move up, and they tried to move up to get Justin Jefferson, they did not. They were not able to. Brandon Ayuk gets sniped right in front of them. By the way, he's now available for trade, but you have faced the same issue. He's not going to help you this 2025 season until the same time Christian Watson could. Now, if the 49ers are going to build that into the discount here, I would probably give up a second round pick for Brandon Ayuk if that's what it's going to cost, because you're not getting almost all of year one. So you've got to take some discount if you're the 49ers, right? I would do that. But the Packers draft Jordan Love, which in retrospect ends up being the smart decision. I know that there are Packer fans out there who will never forgive them for not drafting T. Higgins, for not drafting Michael Pittman Jr., but they also could have drafted Laviska Shenault. They could have drafted Chase Claypool. And I don't know that would have helped them that much more. Now, what happened after they drafted Jordan Love was then they tried to move back up. There were two receivers they tried to move back up to get. My educated guess on that one, Chase Claypool, Michael Pittman Jr. Now, there is a player in this draft that I think fits that profile to a T and is frankly a significantly better prospect than either Chase Claypool or Michael Pittman Jr. And we've talked about him. But Jaden Higgins, 6'4", 214, all the jumps, the 4.47. Forget about that for a second. What do you want out of a receiver? Let's just start with where he lines up. Jaden Higgins can line up anywhere. Backside, X receiver locked one-on-one. He can play power slot. The Iowa State moved him in motion as a Z receiver. Moved him around the formation. They threw him bubble screens. Now, he's not a great yards after catch player, but at the line of scrimmage, at his size, his release package is refined already. 2 years, over 900 yards. Shows that to an extent. Elite against man coverage. Yards per route run, man coverage grade by PFF, whatever you want to look at. He wins versus man coverage. And you want to watch him on in-breakers, it's 3rd and 6. You want him to get you a bucket, release off the line of scrimmage. He's got that little jab. He's got that hesitation. He'll throw a little dead leg on a double move. He can run routes at that size. He can drop his weight at that size. He can shield defenders. 7 drops in his career, 2 last season. And the leader in 3rd and 4th down touchdowns or first downs. He is a bucket getter. Can win vertically. Can create down the field. Can create in the red zone, scoring opportunities for you. He checks every box you could want and has the speed. He's not someone you can just like throw a slip screen to and expect him to go create a bunch of yards after the catch, but he's tough. He's physical. He's a more dynamic athlete than Michael Pittman Jr. was. He's a more refined player and a tougher player, a smarter player than Chase Claypool was. I think he's a better prospect than Brandon Ayuk was. This is the kind of player. And I compared him in a radio hit the other day to Javon Walker. Someone who profiles as a number 1 receiver. There aren't that many guys in this draft. Every year I look at it and I go, all right, these guys can be the guy that you can run your offense through, can play that X, be that backside guy who's just going to one-on-one win for you whenever you need him to. In this draft, I think Tet McMillan can do that. I think Travis Hunter can do that. I think Jaden Higgins can do that. Right now, I think that's the whole list. But that makes this, if you can't convince Davante Adams to come, though I think he wants to come, that you can make that work. Because I think in free agency, the Packers are going to be aggressive. Let's say you swing and miss on Davante Adams. He wants to go. Like, chaos happens. The 49ers, there's momentum. The Yorks may be getting cold feet. I'm paying Brock Purdy. Do you, if you're Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, there's some pressure on you to perform. Do you bring in Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams and do that? Okay, well, if you're the Packers, then you got to go out and you got to match with some defense. Malcolm Kuntz, Khalil Mack as pass rushers on the edge. DJ Reed, Paulson Adebo, corners. Those opportunities are out there in free agency. And I don't think any of those guys are going to break the bank. The Packers have plenty of money to go out and pay those guys. The Pro Football Focus, I believe, or maybe it was Spot Track, projected salary for Davante Adams, by the way, 2 years 24, 2 years 27, something like that. Like a crazy low number, frankly. I would think he'd be worth more than that. I think he will get more than that. But then you go into this draft class and you go, okay, it's deep at defensive end, at pass rusher with the defensive tackles. So you're sitting there at 23. Let's say Derek Harmon's off the board. Let's say Donovan Ezraku's off the board. You just stick and pick. trade down to 26 to 30, and you can take Jaden Higgins. I think Emeka Ibuka, though I think he's more of a Chris Godwin slot type player. Chris Godwin is like a 1B. He's a bucket getter. That's what you need. Like Jalen Royals can be that speed guy. I don't know if he can get you a bucket when you need him. Because there's plenty of guys, Jalen Lane, Dante Thornton, there's plenty of fast guys in this class. If you want speed, you can get it. Maybe you do sign Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Not my favorite thing, but maybe you do that. You already signed a corner, you signed a pass rusher. This receiver class, in even the deep receiver classes, there is a finite number of guys who you can funnel your offense through. I think Jaden Higgins is one of those guys. I think the Packers, he's the one that I think will be available when the Packers pick that fit all their types, because I'm concerned Ted McMillan is not going to test well. I was told he was not going to test well, and then he didn't test, and I was getting messages from those people that were like, see, if he were going to test well, he would have tested. So it's not just that I think this is like Ibuka and Higgins are the two guys for me, Higgins more so, where I go, this changes your offense right now. Right now. And remember what Brian Gutekunst said in 2020. We'll end on this. He said after the first round, they didn't think they could find a player that would materially impact their current roster, which is another way of saying we didn't think any of these other receivers would, in a likely scenario, be better than the guys we have. Well, when you game this out, the Packers need to take a receiver in this draft because they're not going to keep both of Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson. And right now, today, they might not keep either of them. So that leaves Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, Bo Melton, and Malik Heath. That receiver room is not good enough. That's like next year, a year from now, this time. You need to have some more answers. So how about getting a guy who can be a bona fide receiver one and who fits well with your other guys because he can win vertically, because Jaden Reed can threaten the slot and the seam deep, because Luke Musgrave can do that too. I think Dontavian Wicks can do it more than he's been allowed to show. Higgins is the guy for me. If you want a receiver in this draft, and I think this is an opportunity for the Packers to take one, he's the kind of guy will block, smart, tough, physical. This is that 2020 class, but the one guy that I think, well, and I like McMillan and Travis Hunter, corner, whatever, is not going to be there. Doesn't matter. So this is one of the guys you can get, someone who can change your franchise. Maybe now is the time. The Packers locked their kicker up. Some kicker talk. Let's do it. Next. Brandon McManus is coming back on a 3-year, $15.3 million deal. And I wondered about this with Brandon McManus because he's an older player. Can he be a long-term solution? Well, a 3-year deal, he's only 33 years old, but a 3-year deal is the Packers saying, yeah, this is our answer for now. It's not like he's 37, right? And by the way, like a lot of these kickers, they just keep doing it. Now he's used to Lambeau Field, handled the elements pretty well. Now, was it perfect? No. There were some misses that turned out to be consequential in some games that the Packers lost. But I can't blame Brandon McManus for losing to the Lions in the rain. I can't blame Brandon McManus for the Eagles playoff game. But it certainly would have changed the calculation. It certainly would have changed those games. But that just shows how valuable having a reliable kicker is. Now, I don't want to throw cold water on this because I do think this is an important thing for the team to just say, we don't have to worry about this anymore. What a blessing. But I don't want this to have the same impact on the Packers in 2025 and beyond that it did in 2024. I don't want it to make Matt LaFleur more conservative in plus territory. You heard Jordan Love on this program say to me, I always want to be aggressive. I hope that the Packers, advanced analytics people, game management people, Connor Lewis, like those guys get to Matt and say, look, got to be more aggressive in plus territory, especially. Got to have better plays for those situations. But there are going to be times when you need a kicker. That Texans game, yes, they marched right down the field. Jordan Love was awesome. I think we forget that. Like, the big games. Jordan Love hurt, marches down the field against the best or second best, by DVOA, top 3 defense all year, Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson. They march right down the field and Brandon McManus kicks the game winner. You still need those moments 3-4 times a season. Or you need that field goal. You're down 10-0 and you need that field goal in the second quarter just to get back in the mix, just to get back on track. It's 4th and 8 and you throw an incomplete. And it's just like, okay, well, there's no going for this here. You got to kick the field goal. There is still a utility in kickers, even if I think most teams can be more aggressive than they are. There is still a utility in having a good kicker. And it is no longer a foregone conclusion. This is not your older brother's NFL where extra points are foregone conclusions, especially in the elements. Brandon McManus was nails kicking extra points this season. I know that seems like a small thing, but you give away a point here and a point there, and all of a sudden you're in a game that might have been 1 score because you missed an extra point is now a 2-score game. Or it's an 8-point game when it should have been a 7-point game, and now you got to go for 2. So having a reliable kicker, and when you look around the league, you look around the NFC, not everybody has one. And so the Packers do. They locked him up for the next couple years at a handsomely paid, and rightfully so. He earned it last year, the stability that he brings to the position. Now, I understand the baggage that he came with. The Packers got a chance to see him up close and personal, assess for themselves the quality of his character. We don't always trust NFL teams, professional sports teams, to make the right decisions on that. It is usually the quality of the player is going to dictate those kinds of things, the need. So it is certainly possible that the Packers said, we do kind of think this guy's not the best, but we need his kicking. It's possible they did that. You hope that's not what happened. You hope he was a value add in the locker room and they said, look, we weren't there. We don't know what happened. The NFL did their investigation. We trust them. We feel good about this moving forward. And you hope that they're right. I think that's, if you're a fan, that's like the best you can do in a situation like that. In terms of feeling good about it. You don't have to. You don't. I'm not judging that choice of yours either way. I would understand if you didn't feel that way. This is the Packers kicker. So I'm not going to feel the need to bring it up like every time something happens. But I think when he was signed, it was important to bring it up. I think now that he's been extended, it's important that it's brought up. We're going to move forward. He's the Packers kicker. And the Packers made their decision. You get to make yours as a fan about how you want to feel about it. There's going to be so much more that happens this week. The Packers have a decision to make on TJ Slayton. The new league year starts in a week from today, in fact. So there's going to be decisions made. You got to sign these players before they hit the market or not. Davante Adams, that could happen by the end of the week. Maybe the Packers, they can't find a trade partner for Jair Alexander. They just move on. They release him. Let him go. That all could happen coming up this week. Of course, if the Packers make a big move, if they make a big trade, if they do something interesting, we will be live to talk about it over on our YouTube page. So go subscribe over on our YouTube page. Follow me on all the social medias. I will post about going live on the YouTube page. And go subscribe, like, rate, review on all the podcast channels that you happen to use. Please do that. It helps the show. We appreciate it. So you can stay and you can help other people stay locked on Packers.